Hi, Nico.
How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again too. So I was telling the audience that today we're going to speak about backyard astronomy and spotting satellites.
Yes.
So I had the chance. I was lucky enough to meet Remco about 4 years ago now, and for a Meet ESO event we held at Alma back in 2016, and so he's a very enthusiast about astronomy and space science, all space-related science. He's the owner of 70 Media, a specialized media on social network for space, and he's the CEO of Space Up Foundation. He also organized trips to watch how the rockets launch. No, you still do that? I
Yes,
remember.
correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
that
I've organized quite a few trips to Kazakhstan to watch Russian space
because of
launches. Yeah.
excellent. So please let's all welcome Remco. I'm very happy to share this time with you, and so you sent me some pictures to show. So you will tell me whenever you need them. I will show them
Yeah, sure.
briefly.
Yeah. No, that's a good
I,
idea. So,
The idea is that first you will introduce a little the subject, and then we're going to be answering some questions from the audience, okay? From the comments.
yes, perfect. So, okay, well, thanks again, Nico, and the ALMA Observatory team for inviting me. Can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
hear you well.
Okay.
I hope
Okay.
everybody hears you well. Yeah.
I'm sure that if you can hear me all the way down in Chile, then everybody can hear me around the world. So thanks again for inviting me, and yeah, it was a big honor to be invited 4 years ago to the observatories in Chile. So thanks again for the opportunity back then. That was definitely an opportunity of a lifetime, and I've been invited to this talk to talk about something related to astronomy, to the work that Alma is doing in Chile. And since we're all locked up, at least much of the world is locked up in this horrible pandemic situation, I thought we might talk about backyard astronomy, because backyard astronomy since March or April, when many countries went in lockdown, this became kind of a theme on social media, and I thought this might be a nice thing to talk about now that we're unable to travel to all kinds of places to look at the stars. You don't really have to travel to any place to look at the stars, and I've been out many nights. I live in the UK, which is not the best place for astronomy, but we've been lucky enough to have had exceptionally good weather and clear nights. Although there's nothing compared to what we have in Chile to look out. But perhaps you can show a few of the slides that I sent you, Nico. Maybe the first ones. This is what I normally see during the day from my backyard, and what anyone around the world see from the backyard. I'm actually looking out the window here, and I see one of those birds flying over. We have lots of red kites flying in the neighborhood. So during the day, there's a lot to see from your own garden in the sky. Can you go to the next one, please? Yeah, and this is another thing that we see a lot here. I don't live very far from London Heathrow, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. And although it is by no means nowhere near as busy as it is normal, there's lots of aircraft to spot. And if you like to see aircraft, there's a lot to see in the sky. But obviously, the main attraction we wanted to talk about is what you can spot during the night. So can you move on, please, Nico? And I've been following, well, for several years now, quite a few people online, mostly on Twitter, but also on Instagram, who take pictures like these. And it's really doesn't require a lot of equipment, just a little bit of basic knowledge, and you can watch these things from your back garden using binoculars or using long lens tele lens photo cameras, and you can look at these things, and there's a lot to see. And actually, when you get into it a little bit, there's a lot more to see than than what many people imagine up in the sky. And obviously, I showed the picture of the moon first because the moon is the most obvious object that you can watch from basically anywhere in the world. And you can take amazing pictures. And I'm always amazed every night. The moon looks different. It's in a different phase. It's at a different angle. It's lit in a different way. How beautiful this object in the sky is, and how we can observe using just our normal eyes or use binoculars or use a simple telescope to look at this other body out there in space and well, ask yourself the questions that we all ask ourselves. And the moon is, I would say, a very good object to start observing when you start looking at the night sky. And can you scroll through the pictures a little bit, Nico? Maybe at some speed. This is, of course, the full moon, and depending on how you look at it, you see it like this in some clouds, or you see it as the previous picture, where you can see the mountains and the craters, and both offer different perspectives. Can you just scroll through a little bit further on, Nico? Yeah, this is a picture I took just a few days ago. I don't know if you noticed, but it was visible all around the world, assuming you had nice weather. This is what we call the strawberry moon. It has nothing to do with strawberries. It's just because it's the first full moon in June that we call the strawberry moon. And this naming conventions, just look them up on the internet. It's kind of interesting how people have given different names to the different full moons that we see. And this was during a penumbral eclipse that we had, where the moon went through the half shadow of the Earth, so not through the full shadow, but through the what we call the penumbra shadow of the Earth, so a partial shadow. And it shined, it came up. This was during moonrise in the late evening here in the UK, just a few streets away from my house, and it was visible as a beautiful orange. And this is again something you don't see often, but it's another beautiful way to look at the moon. Can you scroll further, Nico?
Sure.
Yeah, this is also something that you can see from anywhere. And this is when the moon is in its early phases, so when it's visible as a crescent, a brightly lit crescent. You can still see the full moon, and this is caused by the reflection of light on our own planet that reflects on the moon. So sunlight reflecting on Earth on the well, I guess the dark side of the moon in this case, and there is enough light emitted by our own planet or reflected by our own planet to still see the full moon, even though it is visible just as a crescent. It's a beautiful effect. Next one, please. Yeah, this is how you would normally see it, as a crescent. So depending on how you set your camera and how you look at it yourself, you either see this crescent or you see the Earth shine.
Give me 30 seconds. I'll close the curtain so we have less light, ambient light, so we can show.
Okay.
It's a little dark, the image.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, that might work out better.
There you are. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the moon in its earliest phase, and you can look up again on the internet what time in your area the sun rises, at what time the sun sets. It's different every day, so you have to maybe look it up on the internet, or there's different apps that you can use on your phone that will tell you when the moon comes up on a particular night, and where it comes up as well. Where do you have to look from your back garden? Okay, can you scroll on? Move on. But sometimes you don't even have to wait for the night. This is the moon visible in the middle of the day. So if it's a clear day with little clouds and little pollution, you can perfectly spot the moon. In this case, it's almost half full in the middle of the day. So not all astronomy has to be done during the night. So if you're sitting in your back garden enjoying the sunshine, have a look. Maybe the moon is out there. Again, look it up on the internet or on one of these apps. Okay, next one, please. Yeah, and then once you get into these things, and you start looking up things online, or read about it, or even use like an astronomical observation calendar, you can see that there are certain events during the year that we call events that that are certain things that only happen very rarely. So in this case, it is a picture of the planet Venus. That's the very bright spot you see in this picture, in a constellation called the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. It's a constellation that is visible here in the northern hemisphere towards the west right now. But this is the planet Venus, which was very bright in the last well, not the last weeks, but about a month to 2 months ago, and at a few evenings it went. In its trajectory, it went through the Pleiades star cluster, and these close encounters, if you like, are very interesting and very beautiful to watch. Okay, next one, please. Yeah, this is an interesting picture because this is the same picture basically, but with an aircraft passing, and this is a great introduction to the next thing that I wanted to talk about. So these are the flashing lights. You can see 3 lines. The line in the middle is the flashing light on the main fuselage of the aircraft, and then there's two lights on each of the wings, and it went right through my picture. And this is an aircraft, but the topic that I wanted to introduce here as well is there's other things that you can see in the night sky that are not aircraft, but that are man-made, and that makes for very interesting viewing as well. Can you go to the next picture, please? Oh yeah, but before we go there, actually this is an introduction. This is what happens if you focus your camera. You can't see this with your own eyes because this is a very long exposure. This is about a 20-minute or half an hour exposure. I forgot the exact time. When you look at the Polaris, and again, the Polaris, known as the North Star or the Pole Star, that is visible in the northern hemisphere. If you point your camera at that and you leave your lens open for quite a while, you see everything evolving around Polaris, and of course the stars are not evolving around Polaris, but the Earth is rotating underneath Polaris, where Polaris, because of its position in the night sky, appears to stay in the same place, and everything else rotating around it. And this is something you can only see with a long exposure. But long exposures, I mean, they create these beautiful star trails, but they also create other things. And if you go to the next picture, yes, long exposures are great for capturing satellites. And this is a picture again of all these little lines that you see are stars that are apparently moving through the sky because the Earth is rotating. My backyard and the entire Earth with it was rotating, causing my camera to slightly rotate and creating lines instead of dots for stars. But you do see things passing through the image, and in this case these are both polar orbiting and other high inclination satellites that are visible, usually in the early evening or in the very early morning, so in the beginning of the night or the end of the night, when your backyard and your camera and yourself are in darkness, but high up in the sky at the level where these satellites are flying, these satellites are still lit by the sun. And when you take a long exposure, you see them, you see them with your naked eye, you can see them as a bright dot moving across the sky without flashing lights. If it's flashing lights, it's usually an aircraft, but in these times of the COVID pandemic, there aren't that many aircraft, and there's a good chance that if you look up in the sky, that it's actually a satellite that you see fly by. And if you use a longer exposure, keep your camera lens open for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, whatever the exposure was on this picture, you see these satellite trails crossing through your image. And it's interesting because you can see, well, you can use the internet or even a few apps to look up what these satellites are. Are these communication satellites, or are they Earth observation satellites? Are they large ones or small ones? And you can find a lot of information by just looking up from your backyard and see what it is that is flying over your own house in the middle of the night. And once you get your eyes adjusted on a clear night, you will be surprised about the number of satellites that you can actually see crossing the sky overhead. Can you move to the next one, please, Nico? Yes, here's another one. And this is one that I hope many of you have seen. Again, this is a picture taken from my backyard about a month and a half ago. We had a few very bright passes of this thing that you see passing. Again, you see Venus, the very bright spot, and in the Pleiades cluster towards the west, and you see a line going through, and that line is the International Space Station. And the International Space Station is a very interesting object to take pictures of, because after the moon, it is the brightest object in the sky if it is visible. And well, as many of you will know, the ISS orbits the Earth every 90 minutes. So it takes 90 minutes for the International Space Station to complete an orbit around the planet. And there's a good chance that during those 90 minutes, it will pass over your house. And again, if it is dark where you are, but still light where the ISS is, in the late evening or in the very early morning, then there's a good chance that you see it fly over. And there's several apps for your phone available to see where the ISS is and if there's any visible passes. And you can very easily see it with the naked eye flying over your house. Can you go to the next one, please, Nico? Yeah, and this is it's not really visible. I see well, again, there's a line in this picture, and you can see that this is taken the beginning of the night. Yeah, it's not visible on this image like this. Yeah, maybe if you brighten it. Yes, there it is. Thanks, Nico. There it is. This is again. You can see that this is. Well, you can now see where it is because you can recognize the constellations. There's Orion right in the middle, and there's the moon, the very bright star. Well, what appears to be a star, that very bright dot over there is the moon, and you see the ISS going right through the path of the moon over my neighborhood. This is just a 2-3 minute walk from my house. Flying, you can see it fly over and through the moon. This was a particularly beautiful night where the ISS crossed the moon. So next image, please. And we're getting towards the end. Yeah, and here it is again on a different night from the same position, and you see the ISS, that line crossing right through Orion, somewhat lower on the horizon. And again, you will need an app because the position of the ISS is, and the time it appears is, if it appears in a visible way, is different every night. But if you have the opportunity and the app will tell you exactly where it will fly, to set up your equipment in an appropriate way, you can take really nice pictures of the International Space Station, which right now has a crew of, what is it, crew 7? Is that right? No, crew of 5 at the moment, flying over, well, in this case, over the UK. Can you go to the next one, please? Yeah, and here it is again, towards the east, from the same location, and you see the trail suddenly appearing in the middle of the night sky, and that is the point where the space station actually enters the shadow of the Earth. And once the ISS is no longer lit by the sun, the dot very suddenly disappears into, well, it looks like into nothing, but obviously the ISS goes here from the light side of its orbit towards the dark side of its orbit through the Earth's shadow, and then obviously it's no longer visible. I think that was the last one, Nico.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
So can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Why is like it was not a reflection, but like it was a light, because it has like a periodic dot.
Yeah, it looks like a dotted line. Yes, that is the way, and it gets a little bit technical, but that is the way how my camera works. So I take short exposures of, in this case, I think it was 5 seconds or 10-second exposures, and I then combine all these photographs. I kind of layer them on top of each other in order to create a line. But the camera between the shots there's a little moment where it doesn't take a photo at all, and that's these dark spots that make it look like a dotted line.
Okay, I understand. I understand. Thank you. Just I had this doubt because the plane had like dotted lines and
It makes it look like a plane that way. Yeah, that's a bit tricky, and some astrophotographers will actually fill those gaps through software to make sure it is one line. Or you can use, if you know how to do it. I'm just a beginner here, so I'm definitely not a professional photographer at all. Far from it, I would say. And I've learned most of these things through my friends on the internet that I'm following on Twitter, and we talk about how to do all these things and what are the tips and tricks on photographing these things. And I probably started with this in 2016 when I went to Chile, and I thought I have this opportunity to see this beautiful, unpolluted, because we have a lot of light pollution here. And in Chile, you have these unpolluted skies, especially near the different observatories. So the first pictures we took in Paranal, they were just absolutely amazing. The way you see the Milky Way and the stars from places like Paranal or from San Pedro de Atacama, near where Alma is just absolutely incomparable to what we see here in the UK. But what I'm trying to say is that even from where you live, wherever that is, and this is quite a light polluted area. I live just under an hour away from London. There's a lot of lights here, a lot of people, lots of roads and cities. But still, during the night, there's a lot to see, even from the most light polluted areas in the world, thankfully.
excellent, excellent. So tell us a little more about what you do in 70 Media and maybe like invite people that are space enthusiasts or astronomy enthusiasts, how to get to know more about it.
Sure, no, absolutely. Well, 70 Media is my own company, so it's just me, and it's a social media agency that specializes in doing social media campaigns for space. So I work for different space companies, and I work on outreach campaigns, I work on marketing campaigns, but anything related to social media and space is really what I do. And this came forth from a hobby. I really started to use social media like anyone here online is using social media to meet people and to learn things and to talk to people and to form opinions about things, and that's how I started. And I kind of found a whole space community out there, people with the same interest as me. And before social media, I was kind of a little bit alone in my hobby and my interest in space. And through social media, I found this space world, and it excited me so much. This way that social media connect people, connect ideas, connect people from different countries. I'm talking to you, from the UK to Chile, and that's what social media does. It takes away these boundaries, and it brings people with similar interests together to talk about their hobby and to learn new things from people the other side of the world. And I decided to make it my job, basically.
Maybe people can tell us where are they hearing us from, like, because you're in UK, we're in Chile. Maybe we have people from so many places in the world. Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
the comments. That would be nice to know. Where are you hearing us from? Portugal. Look,
Well,
they started. So
there we go.
And have you we're doing this activity again next Thursday about
Yes.
but with a different topic.
Yes.
So it will be about good places in the world to observe the sky or something like that, no?
It will be about that, and it will be a little bit about how to do this observation. So a little bit about the techniques on how to do that, and hopefully I'll be able to share some of the equipment and some of the tips and tricks that I was just mentioning about on how to do it, and to show people really how easy it is to do this. So good places around the world. We'll talk a little bit about light pollution and these types of issues, but also how easy it is really to amazing pictures.
Excellent. What the pictures you showed us? What equipment did you use to take them? For example,
there's two basic things that you need. I use a DSLR camera, with different lenses depending on what I want to take a picture of. I either take a very wide angle lens, or I take a very specific zoom lens, or a tele lens. Nothing too fancy, nothing too special. I also have a telescope, but I've not been able yet to take good pictures through the telescope with my camera. There are ways to do it, but I'm nowhere near professional enough to do that. Some of my friends do, and the results are absolutely amazing. But to start, you really don't need any fancy or expensive equipment. If you can follow us now on Instagram, that means that you have a mobile phone, and there are really good mobile phone apps that allow you to take pictures of the night sky. The Nightcap app, which is a free app that you can download both on Android and iPhone, is a really good way to start, and it lets your phone take these long exposures, and there's some smart software there that will recognize satellite trails, for example, and that will specifically look at satellite trail. There's settings to take pictures of meteorites. We haven't talked about meteorites at all. There's a few meteorite opportunities, meteorite showers that we have during the year, where you can just lie on your back and look at the sky and see dozens of meteorites in an hour. You can take pictures of that. Nightcap app is a great way to get started with astrophotography, if you ask me. You just need a little tripod or a little construction to hold your phone steady for a few minutes, and use that app to see what you can do. It's really good for star trails, for example. That circular picture that I showed you around Polaris,
Yeah.
that was taken through the Nightcap app on my phone.
Excellent. I don't know if you guys have questions over the comments to ask a little. I love when people ask questions through the comments.
I see quite a few of my friends joining here. So hi guys, sorry about the hair. That's what the pandemic does here in the UK, where the hairdressers have been closed for 3 months now.
There are people from Peru, Gran Canaria, Guatemala, London, Harwell. I don't know where it is in UK, but
yeah, that's where I live. That's someone sitting down here in my living room. So hi Abby.
Mexico, Iran. Look, that's fun. And Colombia. Okay.
Yeah, so all over the world, and that's the nice thing about social media. That's what I like about social media, is how it kind of makes these borders disappear, and we talk to people in Asia, in South America, in Europe, in Africa, all at the same time. It doesn't really matter. We all share the same interest, and that's what I love about social media.
Okay, here we have a question. How do you guys think machine learning is helping to the astro science? Wow, that's a tough question.
Well, if I understand the question correctly, these are some very basic skills and basic knowledge that I think excites most people. And the cool thing is of the night sky is that it's available to anyone, and anyone is really intrinsically interested in it. So this is a great thing to show to kids, for example. The fact that Venus is not a star in the sky, but it's a planet. The fact that Mars, which is often visible, or Jupiter, which is often very brightly visible, is not a star, but is actually a planet. Many people don't even realize this. And this is great stuff to talk to kids about. Say, hey, did you know that that bright spot over there is not a star, but it's actually a planet in our solar system? And it is the second planet, or the fourth planet, or the fifth planet, and it's really big. Like Jupiter is a gas giant, and when you use binoculars, you can even see the moons around Jupiter. And these are great conversation starters, and kids love this stuff. They're interested in it because everyone is intrinsically interested in the night sky and the planet that we live on. And it gives us a sense of scale. It gives us a sense of where we are and where we belong, and how we fit in the greater scale of things. So I think for education, the night sky is it's a great conversation starter.
Excellent. Brazil, Chile, okay. India, Delhi, India. Hi, hello to India. I think it's the first time I see someone from India in the connections.
Cool. All around the world. I love it.
All around, yeah, that's super nice. It's quite kind of late in India, actually.
It must be. It's what is it? 7:30 or so here. Yeah,
He
yeah,
must be
exactly.
stargazing. He must be stargazing, or
Yeah,
she.
exactly. So after this call, go out. It's still light here. It only gets dark at 10 o'clock tonight here. It's the summer in the northern hemisphere, so it stays light very long. So for stargazing, this is not so good because it gets dark very very late at night. When you want to go to bed, that's when the stars come out.
Yeah, yeah. We have the same here in our summer, but now it's getting dark
Yeah,
early,
yeah, exactly. So it's
really
it's
early.
it's the good side for you. And it's interesting if any of you have had the opportunity to be both at the northern and the southern hemisphere. I remember the first time I went to the southern hemisphere, and you look up, it's like a different world. It's confusing even, where you see all these constellations in Australia or in Chile or wherever you are in the southern hemisphere that you don't recognize. And you only realize then how familiar you are with the night sky over your own head. And I'm so used to the northern
Yeah,
hemisphere, and I guess most people will be used to the northern hemisphere because that's where most people live. Uh, but it's really strange and beautiful to see the other half of our night sky, to see the Southern Cross, to see the Magellan Cloud, stuff that you can only see in the Southern Hemisphere, is is very interesting. And the fact that there is another half of the night sky, that even if you're very familiar with the northern sky, it's beautiful to go to the south if you have the opportunity one day and see a completely different system and start all over again, looking at these things.
yes, it's inspiring. I think the sky is, inspires us in every hemisphere. Mr. Luis is asking, what do you think about James Webb Telescope?
Uh,
Will it ever be launched?
Yeah, it's well, this is one of these very expensive, very complex space projects that, of course, ultimately it will be launched. It's the same as the Hubble Space Telescope. How long did we have to wait for Hubble before it became really operational? It was launched with a massive delay, and then once it was there, it needed to be fixed a few times before it worked. And then after that, it was totally worth the wait. It gave us so much. And will it ever be launched? Yes, of course it will be launched. And we just heard this morning, in fact, that it was another delay, that it's definitely not going to launch in March 2021. But fair enough, it will launch ultimately. And I'm sure it will give us absolutely amazing views that have been worth all the money and all the waiting. Because, if I compare the capabilities of the James Webb Telescope with what Hubble has given us, and Hubble is an absolutely amazing view into the sky. I keep being very inspired and amazed by the pictures that we get from Hubble, and I can only imagine what James Webb will give us once it is there, of course, but it will launch ultimately.
Okay, so just to confirm, what's the name of the app you named to take pictures? Is
It's
that
called
Night Cap?
Nightcap app, in one word. Nightcap app, cap with CAP.
CAP,
Nightcap
yeah,
app.
okay, I got it right. Yeah, and then we have another question: is what do you think will be the effects of the Starlink SpaceX project?
Yeah, well, I guess that you at Alma have an opinion about that as well. This is something that kind of how do I say that? It's a bit of a controversial topic in the uh, astronomy community, where well, you have to balance the justification for having this massive internet communication satellite constellation, thousands of satellites that cross through the sky. And I just explained how nice it is to watch these satellites, but at some point the niceness turns into well, let's say less niceness when it starts interfering with all your images and all the observations that you do of the night sky. And at some point, you see more satellites than you see stars. So personally, I'm not a fan of Starlink, not only because of the light pollution and the astronomy pollution, but also because of the business model that's behind it, and the idea that we need 12,000 satellites for internet around the world. I'm not so sure whether it's worth it, and whether it's worth the investment, whether it's worth the pollution, and also that Mr. Musk seems to sometimes think that space is his and his alone to use. So, but I won't go further than that. It leads to heated debates. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
it's a heated debate, and I think
Yeah.
we need to get as humanity need to get to a consensus.
Well, exactly. Also because Starlink is not the only plan for a constellation. It's just the first one that's now getting out there. We see many more ideas. So Starlink is not the only one. And at some
Yeah,
point, space is actually full, and space debris, the cluttering of space with all these dead and alive satellites, is becoming a big issue that we will need to to find a solution for, not just from an astronomical point of view, but also from a technology and sustainability of spaceflight point of view.
yeah. I'm gonna answer to Erin. The question is, did ALMA capture a good lunar eclipse just recently? And two things. First, we usually don't observe lunar eclipse with ALMA because there's no much science to do behind that. And the observation time at ALMA is quite precious, so we use it in the project we actually select to observe. But not only that, but also ALMA right now, because of the pandemic, it's closed. It's not observing, so we cannot observe anyway. So both two reasons why we didn't observe the eclipse.
Yeah, and there's of course a big difference between radio astronomy and optical astronomy, and the stuff that you do with your eyes and with your photo camera and with your binoculars is optical, which is again a very different specialization than what ALMA does with radio astronomy.
Yeah, well, for ALMA, it's like kind of we don't have the problem of light pollution because we are radio astronomy. So and ultimately, I think Starlink is not affecting really much the antennas because the wavelength in which the Starlink radiates is not the same.
Yeah.
But that can change also. So and we still are also solidar support our fellows observatories, other observatories. So we need to be all together.
Yeah, that might be a different story in La Silla and in Paranal, where they have these big optical telescopes. Then that might be an issue. I'm not a professional astronomer, so I don't know exactly what the issues there might be, but I can imagine that they have an opinion about this as well.
Yeah, they do. ISO has a strong opinion about it.
Yeah, good.
Which accent? Mine? It's a Chilean accent, of course. Of course.
Yeah, or he's talking about mine, which is like half Dutch, half English. Yes.
So Anika Keller is congratulating Alma for her guided tour when she came to visit us. Thank you for visiting us. Then it's a pleasure. Right now we're closed, but as soon as we can, we will reopen the public visits, and I hope everybody can come to visit someday.
Yeah, totally worth it. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's such a beautiful location. Even if you don't see Alma, the Atacama Desert in that place is just for stargazing. Is beautiful, and I must say the tour that we had at Alma, which is largely the same as the public tour, I guess, in the ground station, is very much worth it. So much to learn.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and there is a great science in the make. Okay, so I think we can invite people to join us next Thursday, same time, same channel.
Yes.
It will be also in English. I'll try to find someone to do something similar in Spanish because some people were asking for, and we always get like, oh, but this is in English, we want Spanish. And when we do Spanish things, people say, oh, this is in Spanish, can you have it in English? And we try to do both, but it's not that easy to get everything coordinated right now. So thank you, Remco, again for joining us today and to accepting this invitation. I think this was a great conversation time. And thank you, everybody, for following us. I don't know if you want to say something before closing.
Well, I don't know if you're talking to everyone out there, but I would like to thank everyone because I think we have quite an audience tonight, despite the short notice. So thank you everyone from all around the world for joining, and quizás próxima vez lo podemos hacer en español.
Ah, you speak Spanish very well. Then we can do it in Spanish with you also. Okay, we'll think about it how
Perfecto.
in another timetable, but that's not a bad idea.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation, and Nico, I appreciated this. So thanks for the time that you wanted to spend with me.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.